So siapa yang belum subscribe Gallery Creator, boleh klik button kat bawah subscribe, dan kita jumpa lagi di next episode untuk kita apa lagi proses untuk KA30 ni. Okay, see you, bye bye. Assalamualaikum.
Try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. You try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep with feet, hurt it easy. Fast asleep on this scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try to change, you can say no, free me.
Good evening. Oh, sorry, Max tak ada hari ni guys. Jadi hari ni kita kembali lagi sekali lagi dalam Toyo Super Street Series. Untuk round yang kedua. Malam ni saya ditemani oleh Maicil Todak.
Yo Budi, terima kasih banyak semua. Apa khabar? Assalamualaikum kepada penonton di rumah. Anda sedang menyaksikan satu perlombaan e-sport yang sangat padu pada hari ni.
Padu. Okay, Budi. Ini bukan macam biasa Jadi kita ada event untuk 4 round. Dan malam ni adalah round yang kedua. Kita ada 4 track yang berbeza dan 4 jenis kereta yang berbeza.
Okey.
Oh, ini satu orang kata best lah kan.
Okey, dan event ni dibawakan oleh siapa?
Toyo Tires. Dan juga kita punya rakan media kita iaitu Gallery Creator dan juga DSF, Drive Safe and Fast.
Okey.
Oh, betul lah. Pandai Budi. Okay guys. So sebelum kita masuk ke race pada malam ini, jadi kita akan dengarkan sedikit sepatah dua kata daripada kita punya duta Toyo Tires.
Kejap. Sabar dulu. Sebelum kita dengar dulu, minta penonton-penonton yang tengah menonton sekarang ni, minta like dan share juga video sekarang ni. Sebabnya kita nak ramai-ramai tengok, baru best kan. Kita nak tengok duta kita ni bagi tips ni bukan senang. So share dulu.
Tu jarang-jarang dapat tu.
Share dulu, like, komen, apa benda, subscribe ke apa ke. Lepas tu kita share, okay?
Okay.
Second episode of our discussions with Tengku Jan on the best way to drive your car. Now we are having a look at the steering wheel and steering techniques this time around. We had a quick look at braking and footwork in the first episode. It's probably a nice progression to go into steering wheels and steering techniques. I don't know about you, but I've actually seen quite a few, let's say, interesting steering techniques through my times in Grabs and Ubers. There's a couple of really interesting ones. Perhaps you'd best start with just the basics. How do you even hold the steering wheel for performance driving, and how do you get the most out of the steering wheel?
Yeah, sure. So I think most of us start off driving at the driving school, right? Mm-hmm. And they teach you the push and pull technique. Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with the push and pull technique. It's just that it's way slower. So I mean, as you go down in terms of technology and how cars have progressed, so cars are getting faster. The steering wheel is getting a lot more responsive versus 30-40 years ago, for example. So steering techniques have also changed. So from the push and pull, which we generally learn or practice, I call it the hand-over technique. So basically you're keeping your hands on the 9 and 3 position at all times. Why you keep it at 9 and 3 is so that you know where the center of the wheel is pointing at any time, because wherever you point the wheel, that's where the car is going to go. So if you don't know where the center point is, or if you lose your bearings and you don't know where that center point is, you're in deep trouble, because wherever that wheel is pointing, that's where you're going to end up. So if it's pointing at the wall, you're going to end up in the wall. So I call it the hand-over technique, is because you keep your hands at 9 and 3 position, and let's say you're taking a right turn, and the car starts to oversteer. So you have to, of course, counter steer, but still keeping your hands in 9 and 3 position. So you go over and grab it again at that 9 position. And then once you reach a full turn, you still know where the center of the wheel is pointing. So this is, to me, this is today the the upgraded version of your push and pull technique. So back then steering wheels were way bigger. Today they are average of 350, 330 millimeters. So it's actually a very small wheel. And as I mentioned, steering speeds have gone up way higher. Vehicle speeds too. So even the techniques have changed. So it's a handover technique, which I believe everyone should practice because it would save your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know from a background in doing a bit of rallying and rally sprids, the good steering technique is the difference between panicking and not panicking.
Yes, precisely. Yes. Yeah. And then the only reason you panic is because you don't know where your wheel is pointing, right? I mean, you look at the road and the road is, swearing towards the right, but you don't know where your steering is, and your car is like, oversteering or whatever it is, and you're like, oh man, what do I do? Right? So if you know where the center of your wheel is, then you're always in control. You know exactly where the car is going to hit, and you can then steer the car in the right direction when you need to.
Yeah, and well, I mean, it would be remiss of me to not ask the Prince of Drift this question, but it seems like you might be the most qualified man in Malaysia to answer this question. But what do you think is the best thing to do for an average driver who gets himself into an oversteer situation when the tail gets out, when the car starts to skid, as they say?
Oh, not drive too fast.
Well, first of all, don't get into the situation. Yes.
Well, okay. It also depends on the type of platform which you're driving. Yeah. So if you're driving a rear-wheel drive car, the last thing you want to do when you are oversteering is actually to get off the throttle. Yeah. Because that would upset the car and actually put the car into a spin. With a front-wheel drive car, I don't want to say this, which is not really good. Well, okay. So with the front-driven wheels, when you're in an oversteer position, you should actually get back on the throttle, right? Because it's pulling the car forward. So it actually brings you out of an oversteer situation. With a rear-wheel drive car, if you're in the corner and if you're accelerating and the car does oversteer, the last thing you should do is get off the throttle. And not put on more throttle, because that will also put you into a spin, but to maintain or keep that throttle, so you keep that speed, then keep yourself calm as well, and focus on the steering to bring that car back into a neutral position versus an oversteer position. Last thing you should do is hit the brakes hard. If you don't know the throttle or steering techniques, the other way to do it is actually try and keep as calm as possible and get on the brakes slightly, just to kill the speed, slow it all down, and allow the car to regain its traction. So again, it actually comes down to a lot of practice. So that's why I feel driver training schools are actually very important. So whatever you learn when you take your driving license is actually not enough. You should everyone should take the opportunity to go down to driving schools and learn basic, advanced and safety driving. And driving, same like any other sport, for example, it all comes down to muscle memory. And of course understanding the dynamics behind the vehicle. So the more practice you put in, the better it is. So it's not to just learn how to go faster, but at the same time to understand how to keep yourself and your passengers safe in the car.
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that if you're going to practice all these other things, you have to do it in a safe space with driver training and driver coaches and instructions and all that sort of stuff. So it really is knowledge is power when it comes to that bit, and of course practice.
I mean, cars today, they are also in a form a weapon. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, cars are so fast now. I mean, if you talk about sports cars and performance cars, they are super fast now. You know, and you're basically driving a weapon.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to handle a weapon, then you're going to put yourself in trouble. You know.
Yeah.
So it's very important to know where your limits are. That's one, and then of course know the right techniques to keep yourself safe.
Okay. So yeah, another thing I wanted to ask you about, moving on to a slightly different question, and I think this is a question that most sim racers have sort of argued over, debated over, fights on forums, the whole lot, but everyone seems to have their own opinion, and I'll be interested in hearing what you have to say on the matter. What do you look for in terms of steering feel?
Okay, steering feel to me is a character that comes out of a car.
Right.
So actually steering feel and the feedback out of every car is very different. And I did mention in the last episode about braking that the only thing connecting the car and the road is actually your tires. So actually tires play a big role in steering connectivity, and of course the feel and the feedback that you get out of it. So again, different tires depending on the use. So like for example, if you have your daily driver and you have your regular tires, like say the Proxus CR1, the CR1 SUV, they are built to give a much lighter steering feedback, but of course the connection feel is still there, because the connection feel is important to keep the driver feeling confident, behind the wheel. So why is that? Is because we're using it for daily commuting, right? You don't want a steering feel that is too heavy. And after hours of driving, commuting to work and back again, or let's say a Grab driver or a taxi driver, right? If the steering efforts are too high, you get tired, of driving. And this is important because you want that connection, but at the same time you bring down the overall effort to make driving enjoyable as a daily commuter. But when you go to the other extreme, which is, for example, say track days or racing or motorsports, you want a lot of feedback out of the wheels, and that feedback that you get translates to the overall effort being slightly higher. So with a higher effort, with the amount of load which you put through the tires, actually translates to that feedback and allows you to then connect the dots, basically, understand where the grip limit is, knowing what the car is doing right now or is going to do while you're in the bend. So that's the two extremes. So you talk about, let's say the high performance tires, the TR1s would have a higher steering effort and steering feedback versus the CR1s, which are for daily commuting to bring down the overall efforts, but at the same time not losing that connectivity. So if you ask me what is the best steering feel, it's very hard to to give you an answer in that sense. It really depends on what you are trying to achieve out of your vehicle, whether it's a track day car, whether it's a daily commuter. Like if you ask me, for my daily commuter, I love something that's quiet, has the right amount of connection feel, but without giving me too high of a steering effort. Because it just tires me out when I'm driving. You just imagine a long distance drive up north or down south, right? 3-4 hours in the car. And we've got a steering feel that feels like slick tires, for example. Within 10-15 minutes you're done. You're fed up. But if you go to Sepang circuit, for example, you want all that. You want that steering effort. You want that connection. You want, every pebble, every stone, every bump that you hit, you want that feedback coming from the tire. So you have a way stiffer tire. You have bigger blocks that basically translate to all that information through the steering wheel, so that you can precisely place the car around the corners and achieve the fastest time. So that's to me that's the two biggest extremes if you talk about steering feel, and a lot of it actually comes down to tires.
Yeah, it is a well-known fact that the tires are the most important part in that sort of connection.
Yes.
But in any case, thank you so much to Jan for joining us. Tune in next week where we're going to have a look at another bone of contention for sim races, and to be honest with you, a bone of contention with all races, and that is your car's setup, what the technical abilities of the car will do for you. We'll see you in the next episode.
Okay guys, so kita akan kembali sebentar lagi sebab kita ada sedikit technical issue yang kita kena sort out. So kita akan restart stream dan kita jumpa kejap lagi guys.
Okay, bye-bye.